ERP software, or enterprise resource planning software, has been around for a long time. It's helped a lot of organizations improve and become more effective and efficient. But what exactly is ERP software? I'm going to give that answer here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformation and ERP implementation journeys. And I've been in the ERP software space now for over 20 years. And whenever I'm talking to family or students or someone who's not familiar with the ERP space that I'm in, people often ask, what in the world is ERP and what does that mean? And I mentioned before that enterprise resource planning is what it stands for, but there's a lot more to it than that, and I'm going to talk about that here today. I mentioned that ERP stands for enterprise resource planning. And ERP is actually an evolution from some older technology that was really originated with a lot of manufacturing organizations. And that software was called MRP, Material Resource Planning. So the origin of MRP came to be when a lot of larger manufacturing organizations were finding that they were struggling with managing their entire manufacturing operations. They had trouble tracking customer orders and tracking demand, tracking what kind of parts and supplies they would need to purchase to be able to meet and fulfill customer demand. So MRP systems were a way to handle that. It was a way to manage the tracking of what supplies and raw materials we might need to manufacture for our customers. It was a way to manage the manufacturing shop floor so that we could prioritize orders and make sure that we maximized throughput. And it was really a way to address the whole movement in the 90s toward lean manufacturing and trying to maximize manufacturing efficiency. In the US, a lot of US manufacturers were struggling with manufacturing efficiency and manufacturing quality, and they were being beat by Japanese manufacturing organizations at the time. So MRP systems were a way to help organizations of all origins and all nationalities to help them better become more efficient and more effective. So over time, MRP evolved and morphed into something more than just a manufacturing solution. It started to focus on warehouse management and procurement and financials and accounting, even HCM or human capital management or customer relationship management on the sales side. It took the core of MRP and started to expand in other parts of the enterprise to where organizations were moving towards single systems that could tie together the entire organization, provide one unified data set, provide a common workflow across the organization, and for lack of a better term, provide one system that provided all the operations and data and transparency into what was happening enterprise-wide. And so that's the whole evolution of how ERP came to be. It really traces its origins back decades ago when enterprise technology was first emerging. Now there are a plethora of ERP software providers in the marketplace. The biggest ones, the ones that are most commonly used by bigger organizations, are companies like SAP. Oracle is another one. Microsoft provides its own ERP solution. Those are the three biggest ones, and a lot of organizations and industry analysts will refer to those larger ERP systems as the Tier 1 ERP systems. Those are the ones that are typically better suited for larger organizations, multinationals, more complex organizations, multi-location types of organizations. Those Tier 1 providers are generally trying to provide a breadth of functionality that can meet the needs of those organizations. There's also Tier 2 ERP providers, and these are the providers that are more niche-focused solutions. They might focus on one industry, might focus on one set of capabilities. Just to give you a few examples, Epicor and Infor, for example, are two manufacturing ERP systems that are very common in the manufacturing space, but you don't see them a lot in other industries. You don't see them, for example, in a lot of financial services organizations or professional services organizations. They tend to focus more on manufacturing and distribution and nothing else. So that is another example or another segment of the ERP space, is that whole Tier 2 market. And then you have your Tier 3 or industry niche solutions that there are probably dozens or hundreds of different ERP solutions that fall into that segment. They're either smaller, simpler solutions that can provide capabilities to specific industries, or perhaps certain functions or capabilities within ERP. They may not even be providing full ERP capability. They may be focusing on just one small segment within ERP. And like I said, there's a ton of different options and solutions in that space. So overall, if we look at all the different types of ERP systems out there, there are easily dozens, if not hundreds, of ERP systems that can be used for your organization. Now, I talked about how ERP evolved from the need to have a single unified vision and visibility into how an organization works. And typically, the going-in proposition with ERP implementations is that you're going to have one ERP system that can do everything that you would need technology to do for your organization. Now, that is an ideal situation. It's a perfect world scenario, but the reality is most organizations have unique needs and unique challenges that can't be met by one single ERP system that's trying to be everything to everyone. So what the single ERP system model has done is it's created a niche or a void that's being filled by what we call best of breed ERP systems. And these are systems that are not meant to be one single ERP system that's going to be everything for everyone within your organization, but it might be that you're focusing on different segments of your business. So for example, within your sales organization, you might have CRM or customer relationship management software. Within your HR department, you might use a separate or a different human capital management software that specializes in that. And Workday, for example, is a good example of a system that provides just HCM capabilities. You might have a different system that provides financial and accounting capabilities. And you could also, in addition to those examples, be using a core back office ERP system to tie it all together. So best of breed systems is a common trend that we're seeing in the market. And it's in some ways more complex because now you have multiple systems that you have to tie together. But in other ways, it provides more flexibility. It provides more precise fit with what your unique business needs might be. And there's certainly trade-offs to both the best of breed model as well as the single ERP model. But when talking about ERP, it's important to look at the whole picture of what are those spectrum and continuum of options available to you in the marketplace. Now, if you've done any research on ERP software in general, you've probably seen that ERP implementations quite commonly fail. In fact, many statistics put the failure rate at above 80% of organizations that try to implement ERP, whether it's a tier 1 system, a tier 2 or 3 system, or a single ERP, best of breed ERP, doesn't really matter. The failure rate is fairly high. So the question becomes, if the technology is great and there's so much demand for this technology, how could they possibly fail as often as they do? And if you check out my channel and some of the other videos on my channel, just search the word failure, and you'll find a bunch of videos I've created about how to avoid failure, why projects fail, what some of the common challenges are. But in a nutshell, the reason ERP implementations typically fail is not because of the technology, but it's because of the operational and the people side of things. The technology in general is very robust, it's very sophisticated, it's innovative, it can do a lot of different things. That's usually not the problem, although technology can create complications during implementation. But the more common challenges and problems with ERP implementations are that we haven't adequately addressed our business process improvements, we haven't adequately addressed our organizational change management or our people needs. So in other words, and to put it simply, people don't like to change. And because they don't like to change, new technology, no matter how great it is going to be difficult for your organization to adapt to. So in its simplest terms, people and processes are why ERP implementations fail. Like I said, I encourage you to watch some of the other videos on my YouTube channel that go into that topic in more detail. But in general, that's why implementations fail. So the question becomes, how do we implement ERP software? If most of them fail, what can we do differently to implement well? And to simplify and to summarize what I've also talked about in other videos on my YouTube channel, the first thing is to find the right software or technology that's the best fit for your organization. That's kind of the first step. That's the minimum ante that you need to be able to succeed, is to make sure that the software or technology you're implementing is a good fit with what your needs are, and make sure you get an independent assessment and view and an objective evaluation of the different options in the marketplace so you can find the best technology for your organization. A second critical success factor is to ensure that your organization is aligned on what it wants to be when it grows up. A lot of times organizations are trying to implement ERP software at a time of turmoil, at a time of misalignment, or at a time of strategic misalignment where the organization isn't on the same page with the direction it's going, it doesn't have a clear vision, and then you try to overlay new technology on top of that, and that's a recipe for failure. So making sure you have clear alignment on your overall organization is very important. And again, I've included some videos below that will help you further dive into that topic. And then the implementation itself. When we focus on the implementation, it's important not to focus too much on the technology, but to shift some of the time, resources, and attention from technology over to the people and process side of things. If we do the people and process side of things very well, and we also have alignment, and we've also picked the right software or technology for our organization, we have the best chances to succeed. But the problem is most organizations fail in one or more of those three critical success factors. And like I said, I encourage you to download some of the content I've included links to below that'll dive more into what you need to do to be successful for your ERP implementation. So ERP software had its origins many years ago with some very simple types of objectives it was trying to accomplish. It was just trying to track inventory and orders and activities better within an organization. Sounds simple enough, but over the years it's evolved into more than that. It's not only trying to tie together an organization, provide one common single source of truth for what's happening in the organization, but it's also now trying to introduce more advanced technologies and capabilities into ERPs. So for example, there's new artificial intelligence that's helping organizations automate some of their business processes better. There's machine learning that looks for patterns and exceptions to things as simple as accounts payable processing of invoices. Machine learning, for example, can automate the accounts payable process and use artificial intelligence to flag the exceptions or the things that look like outliers or the things that look like could be potential problems in your accounts payable invoice processing. So that's just one minute example of how machine learning and artificial intelligence is being used to take ERP to a whole nother level. You also have blockchain, which is being used by many organizations in pharmaceutical and food companies, for example. They need to track every raw material and part in an entire production process, an entire distribution process, so that if there's ever a recall or a regulatory problem, blockchain can be used to trace problems back to the supplier, and that's a new technology that's being provided. And then finally, one other common trend we're seeing is Internet of Things. If you have an Apple Watch and your Apple Watch is tracking your daily activity, that's an example of Internet of Things. It's tracking that information, it's storing it in the cloud, and what you do with that information and how information like that could tie back to an enterprise is very important. For example, a lot of manufacturing organizations will have Internet of Things type devices out on the shop floor that will be tracking data on the shop floor that will then tie back to the ERP system so that you can see complete visibility into what is not only happening within the corporate headquarters, but also what's happening out on the shop floor. So those are just a few examples of some of the trends that are emerging in the ERP space. So ERP software can be a very powerful thing. If managed correctly, implemented correctly, and leveraged correctly, organizations can go to the next level in their respective journeys. But it requires the right focus, the right discipline, and also just finding the right technology. So I encourage you to look at some of the downloads I've included links to below that'll give you more of a picture of some of the top ERP software systems in the marketplace, some of the best practices around how to implement ERP software. I've included links to some white papers and blogs below that might help you through that journey. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.